Hi, I'm a mom. I have four children, three girls and one boy. And I had children because they are the greatest joys in life. I wanted children so I could give them unconditional love, mentor them, and leave a legacy. I was a working mom as my children were growing up. I combined my passion of health and wellness into my career. However, I never knew how much being a health coach, personal trainer, and nutritionist would help me in my life challenges. Allow me to share a story with you. I was driving home on a Friday afternoon in rush hour traffic. I was lost in thought, thinking about Christmas, just a few weeks away. Christmas is my favorite time of year. It is a special time with my family, being together and recognizing it as the birth of Jesus Christ. Ever since my divorce, Christmas mornings have even had more meaning. The joy, the laughter, and the chaos of opening presents are precious. My children and I bond at this time, and family share our love for each other. We enjoyed our tradition of homemade Swedish tea rings, tea, orange juice for breakfast. We had our way of passing out presents in that special order and then opening them as each one of us oohed and awed at each other's presents. Christmas is our guaranteed family time together. My thoughts were interrupted when my phone rang. It was my daughter. Rather than hearing her say hello, I heard her say, "He hasn't been feeling well," to someone else in the room. I immediately knew she was talking about her brother, my son, Connor. They worked at car dealerships next to each other and were quite often found in each other's showrooms helping each other. I yelled out to her, "Brittany," through the phone, but she did not answer. My heart started racing and my mother's instinct went into high gear. Something was wrong. I hung up the phone and I called her back. She answered. I could tell she was upset. The next few sentences she could barely get out in between her sobs and her tears and her cries. She said, "Mom, I don't know how to tell you this, but Connor is dead. He killed himself." I hit the steering wheel with both hands and yelled out to God, "How could this be happening? Why? Why was this happening?" I had a flashback of 28 years earlier when my 9-month-old daughter passed away. I had already made it through the loss of one child. Why, oh, why, oh, why? God, this was not fair. I was in shock. I could not think. All I knew is I had to get to him, my son Connor. I had to get to my daughter as well. Our family needed to be together. I turned my car around and headed towards where my son had taken his last breath. It was the second longest drive of my life. A parent's worst nightmare is to have a child die before them. It is not the natural order of things. We're willing to trade places for everything, but giving up our children is not what we're supposed to do. We're never prepared for that. With the loss of my first child, I looked everywhere for help and resources and could not find them. I felt like I walked on this journey alone. And I clawed my way to my norm and I developed my own methods along the way. And in between the loss of my first child and my second, I experienced many other family deaths, both my parents, sister, nieces, cousins. What I discovered is that the things I designed to help me heal from my first loss helped me with all the rest of those. And I knew then that I had tools and resources to survive losing my second child to suicide. In the next 60 minutes, I will offer some background information about suicide and how I used all four areas of health to accept my son's death and now live a fulfilling life. I believe to heal as a suicide loss survivor, one must take a whole body approach of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Hi, I'm Peggy Green, author and public speaker. In the heat of grief, it is easy to not understand why I was going through this. I questioned, how could I do it? I cried out in the loneliness of the night and asked God why. I could not answer the question, but I can answer it now. I was in a dark place and it came to me. God has been helping me and preparing me for these times. God is not responsible for my losses. However, He has given me the strength and courage to overcome my heartache. I can say I've been able to move through my grief. It's not always been easy. It's not been pain-free. It takes time. It's hard. And I will always be on the suicide loss survivor journey. We may question, will the pain go away? Humans are meant to have good emotions and bad emotions and experience pain. As a human, sometimes I expect that I should never experience that, though. That was an unrealistic expectation. So I learned to give myself permission to be human. I stopped thinking I had to be joyful and happy 100% of the time. This is not the case. I'm not perfect, and sadness and joy can coexist. I found purpose to move forward, and that's when I wrote Life After Child Loss, the Mother Survival Guide to Cope and Find Joy, and became a grief coach. Now, not everyone will write a book or become a grief coach. What I do know is that you will not return to the same life you had before suicide. You will learn to adjust to lived life without your loved one, though. Allow me to share a story. Your grief is like a cocoon in the darkness that surrounds you. You do not know how you will get out. You take small steps every day, maybe begging your wings, and you're looking for their light, and you want to make small breakthroughs. And then one day, much to your surprise, you look in the mirror and see you're not the same person. Like the caterpillar that entered the cocoon and is broken free, you're now transformed into a beautiful butterfly with a newfound appreciation for life. I hope that you can see yourself as that caterpillar and come out of the darkness and experiencing life with joy and peace and happiness. Death of a child is unique. No one understands it. It is a mother's nightmare. As a mother, you never expect to outlive your child. It changes your total being. There's a there's a hole in your heart, and you're yearning to be reunited with your child. Your friends change. They're afraid to say and do the wrong things. They cannot comprehend the depth of your pain. I get it. I've been a grieving mom for 30 years. I've also been a healing mom for 30 years. And now I'm mother of a child who is not only been lost, but lost by suicide. This is totally brand new, and I swiftly found myself being described as a suicide loss survivor. And I wanted to know what that meant. This is the definition. A survivor of suicide is a family or friend member of a person who has died from suicide. Anyone who is close to someone that has died by suicide feels affected is a survivor. And you do not have to be a family member to feel the impact of suicide. I was exposed to suicide several times before Connor took his life. I didn't understand it. And now that I'm involved, and not by choice, mind you, I want to learn as much as I can and share and educate others. With that in mind, I thought I would share some quick facts about suicide. Suicide is a major health problem with more than 800,000 deaths worldwide by suicide. There are currently over 47,000 suicides annually in the US, and every death leaves a wake. And ultimately, about 1 million Americans are affected by suicide each and every year. I'm sorry that you are one of those 100. And some of those also require postvention. So what is postvention? It's considered to be activities which reduce risk of suicide and help those after suicide heal. Suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the US, 2 times as many as HIV and AIDS. Male suicide to female ratio is 4-1. And now firearms are used more in suicide than homicides, accounting for about 60% of that type of death. Next is hanging, suffocation, and strangulation, comprising about 20%. And then liquid poisons and overdoses are 10%. Gas poisons are about 6%. And that is all wrapped up with jumping from high places into moving objects, fires, burns, and intentional motor vehicle crashes. Some staggering statistics, wouldn't you agree? I was talking with a friend and he asked me if suicide with grief was harder than other types of loss. I took a moment to answer that question because I personally have struggled with why I feel different between my grief of Courtney at 9 months old in a daycare accident and Connor, 24 years old, who died by suicide. I concluded that suicide bereavement is not harder because there's no comparison in between cancer, illness, and accidental death. All of it is hard. What I did tell him is that loss by suicide is incredibly unique. It is messy, it is complicated, and it is different than other modalities. Here are a few things that contribute to the complexity of those bereaved by suicide. Suicide loss survivors are left to find answers. They want answers. They want to take responsibility for their loved one's death and choice. Survivors experience high levels of guilt. There's social stigma around suicide. The loss of someone increases the risk of you choosing suicide also. Unlike other nonviolent deaths, the loss of someone by suicide can create PTSD in the survivors. Survivors experience lack of control, dreams and hopes for the future for the bereaved and the lost. Suicide is traumatic to the brain and the body. It is difficult to find support for survivors of child loss by suicide. Survivors tend to focus on how their loved one died rather than how they lived. And some believe taking their life is a sin. You may feel ashamed that your loved one took their life. You may want to hide it. There's anger at the deceased, guilt, possibly over being happy or experiencing joy. Or you might be experiencing broken heart syndrome. What? Broken heart syndrome? Well, that general hypothesis is when a person has experienced a loss of a loved one or extreme grief, the release of hormones can cause abnormalities that affect the heart muscle. Broken heart syndrome was first recognized in 1991 by the Japanese scientist Sato. The most common symptoms are chest pain and shortness of breath. There are also fainting, weakness, low blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, sweating, nausea, weakness, and weakness in your heart. And if you're experiencing symptoms, please consult your doctor. While this is a serious condition, it is treatable. You may need to seek medical care, but I also know that you can work on that and help to overcome this challenge. Now that you have some background information, let's focus on helping you as a suicide loss survivor. Let's dive into your health. In our part of this time together, I will share about suicide grief in the 4 areas of health: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. I'm excited to share with you how together they help me to heal. So physical health is often overlooked in the grief healing process. Due to the traumatic nature of suicide, it is even more important to address it. It's a barometer that indicates how you are doing in all areas. Some of the physical health symptoms caused by grief include migraines, insomnia, extreme weight gain, weight loss, chronic pain, inflammation, diabetes, heart attack, stroke, and the before mentioned broken heart syndrome. Grief will weaken your immune system, making you prone to cold, flu, and increased risk of autoimmune diseases. Your body is the reflection of the sum of all aspects. Without it, you could fail to thrive and heal. Physical health is foundational in easing complications of your grief and your healing. There are a variety of physical things such as sleep, meditation, hydration, nutrition, and exercise. Because nutrition and exercise are such an important components of your health, We will be focusing on them today. Let's get started with exercise. Regular exercise can have a profoundly positive impact on depression and anxiety. It also relieves stress, improves memory, helps you sleep, and boosts your overall mood. It can help with weight management, improve your ability to focus, and offer a sense of self-control. And you do not have to be a fitness fanatic to reap the benefits. As a personal trainer for 12 years, I helped hundreds of clients reach strength and weight loss goals. I also saw the impact exercise had on several mothers who lost a child. It is not a coincidence I help these mothers. And ignoring your physical health will not make it better. In fact, the longer you deny it, the more the risk of extensive physical health challenges. There are four basic types of exercise: aerobic, strength, stretch, and balance. They're all important components of health, but in the essence of time, I'll only be covering the aerobic, because if I shared all of my knowledge with you, we'd be here a lot longer than 60 minutes, which I did tell you we would hold to. So if you're new to exercise, please consult your doctor before bringing on anything new. Cardiovascular exercise or aerobic exercise can help reduce risk of cardiovascular disease and heal cardiovascular damage, some of which may be associated with broken heart syndrome. It can also lower blood pressure and raise your good cholesterol, take down your bad cholesterol, and can reduce chronic pain and help us sleep and focus. And these are all great benefits, but I haven't mentioned how you can boost your mood with the feel-good hormones of norepinephrine and epinephrine, which are released with an elevated heart rate. Cardio exercise. It reduces your stress and can release feelings of anger and guilt. And some examples of aerobic exercise are brisk walking, jogging, running, playing tennis, dancing, swimming. You get to choose. Just get your heart rate up. So for others, for most people, the Center of Disease Control talks about physical activity for Americans, and they recommend 150 minutes of moderate, kind of in the middle, exercise, or you can do 75 minutes of really high, intense, vigorous activity. But in grief, we set those aside because we want to be able to be sure we're working with you and where you are. But it's about getting started and daily consistency. I find that for most people, walking is the best way to get started. So that is recommended to get 10,000 steps per day. You can buy a fitness tracker, put an app on your phone, whatever works for you. And if you don't know where you stand on the number of steps, I suggest you keep track for 2 weekdays and then 1 weekday, put them together, take an average, and then start with that as your baseline. Then to be able to up that amount of steps, add 5 or 10% per week. And then that will really help you. Now, Brenda, who started working with me after her 29-year-old son took his own life, could not believe I recommended she get off the couch and get outside. She felt like I was forcing her to do something she did not want to do. However, she was open to trying. She was struggling with even the thought of walking out the door. I suggested she started by just walking around the block as part of her morning routine. She committed to trying it for 1 week. She logged her activity for the week and noted how she felt after she walked. We met the following week. She felt lighter. She admitted walking improved her mood and she had more energy. Exercise is also a good way to develop community. You can walk outdoors, you can make friends, and you can go to classes even in COVID, and you can join an online community. Exercise is an important piece to health healing as a suicide loss survivor. You can choose one or several modes of exercise. Remember how it helps with reducing inflammation, lowering your risk of heart disease, and improve your broken heart. People always ask me this question, Peggy, what is the best exercise? I tell them the best exercise is the one that you will do and be consistent with. So just get started. Let us now transition and discuss the role nutrition has in physical health and your grief journey. Processed foods are attributed to weakening your immune system and opening the floodgates to simple colds and flus and other conditions like oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is what damages your body. And I want to share with you what healthy eating looks like. Ultimately, the goal is to follow this as closely as possible. However, give yourself some grace if you do not. Nutrition is about, and wellness is about grief and part of your healing. Pay attention to your gut. Foods and trans fat, excess calories, additives, and salt contribute to inflammation and affects your gut. Your gut is considered to be the second brain, which controls emotional and mental wellness. When feeling stressed, anxious, or sad, focus on keeping up a well-balanced diet. There are 7 parts to this that I want to mention. You will add more real food and water, eliminate gluten and dairy, and finally, reduce caffeine, alcohol, and sugar. I'm offering you today a framework for good nutritional habits. There's so much I would like to share with you. Let's start with the first 2 suggestions when you are adding foods. Add whole foods. So in times of stress and grieving, this causes your body to be more inflamed. It's important during this period you do everything you can to keep your inflammatory load down. That's accomplished by eating whole food. Real food does not come from boxes, cans, or microwave containers. It comes from the earth. It is recommended to eat 9 to 13 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. Simple carbohydrates are fruits and vegetables, and they provide vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that your body needs. They help to reduce inflammation, support your immune system, and include necessary fiber. Whole food has specific health benefits too. For example, blueberries can help with memory. Foods rich in vitamin B help reduce stress, and broccoli and spinach have iron, can help with stamina, strength, and support your immune system. Now, I do understand eating food may be difficult, let alone eating more fruits and vegetables. And that's why I've been taking Juice Plus capsules, plant powdered fruits and vegetables, for years. They make it easy to fill the nutritional gap. It's fruits and vegetables, and they give me the nutrition of those vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants I don't get when I'm not eating like I should. And I contribute staying healthy to them along with other healthy lifestyle habits. Now, good old H2O is the next component. So dehydration is a special danger for bereaved parents because the shock of their loss leaves them stunned, without energy, and inability to focus. You may also experience loss of motivation, aches and pains, headaches. Your body is 80% water, and when you do not replenish it, your organs can shut down. You need water to detoxify the toxins that are coming from the stress you produce while you're in grief. The only way to get rid of those toxins is to drink water. And I mean water. Coffee, tea, sodas, alcohols, energy drinks do not replace water. So how much water you should be drinking? People ask me, Peggy, how much water should we be drinking? Well, you need to be drinking at least 1/2 of your body weight in ounces of water. So take your body weight, take this example, 120 pounds, divide it by 2, and it's 60 ounces. So 60 ounces is the minimal amount of water you should be drinking to stay hydrated, functioning, and helping with anxiety. So focus and drink more water. It's an easy place to start. Add it. So the next 2 recommendations are what I suggest you remove from your diet. So we're going to eliminate gluten from your diet. What is it and why should you avoid it? Gluten is a general term for the proteins found in wheat, rye, and barley. Gluten helps food maintain their shape, acting as a glue that holds it together. I'm not sure about you, but I don't like the idea of eating glue. Gluten provides no essential nutrients, and its byproducts are commonly found in processed foods such as bread, pasta, pizza, cereal, salad dressings, and even other condiments. It's inflammatory and adds to the natural inflammatory process that you're experiencing in your suicide loss survival. And Gluten can have serious consequences to your digestion and may be responsible for stomach pain, irritable bowel syndrome, and bloating. It can also cause brain fog, or known as grief brain, increased fatigue, higher risk of autoimmune diseases, and may contribute to depression. When it all adds up, gluten doesn't serve you. It's really beneficial for your physical and mental health to remove it from your diet. The next thing we want to really remove is dairy. One of the concern is that you're drinking dairy, cow's milk, because they are producing cortisol. You drink the milk that has cortisol in it, and in your grief, you already have enough cortisol. You don't need more. So you want to really eliminate that. It's an inflammatory, milk is an inflammatory, and it's important to reduce your inflammatory load from your diet. It's also responsible for other host of other disease, including breast and ovarian and prostate cancers. And just for your overall health, it's good to eliminate it. And then you don't want to get that extra cortisol. You also want to think about reducing your caffeine. Some people turn to caffeine for energy. It can offer short-term boosts like comfort foods. The letdown is more detrimental than the original's high. You may feel you have to have more as you come off of that original surge. Your body can crave it so much too that you can get addicted to the high and the effect. Caffeine can increase blood pressure, and it's quite common for a parent who's already grieving to have elevated blood pressure. And it's dangerous to artificially inflate it with stimulants from caffeine. It can cause heart palpitations, and that in turn can add to anxiety and anxiousness. Caffeine is also a diuretic, will increase your risk of dehydration. You can not absolutely survive without 1 cup of coffee. Have one in the morning before 10 a.m. And be mindful that it's only 8 to 10 ounces is a serving. If you're buying it from a coffee shop, so many times they're so much larger. Next, we're going to go ahead and talk about eliminating or reducing alcohol. Let's talk about alcohol. And it's recommended to reduce or totally eliminate alcohol while you are mourning. Losing a loved one by suicide is certainly one of the most upsetting and painful experiences you will ever have. It is common to go through a wide range of emotions from anger and denial to sadness and despair. And each person goes through the grieving process differently, and they do not always do it in the healthiest ways. Some turn to alcohol in an attempt to numb the sadness, pain, and grief that follows this major loss. And sadly, self-medicating with alcohol can lead to addiction, even for the seemingly strongest and most resilient individuals. During the grieving process, it's important that you experience and express those emotions that you can eventually move through your loss and heal. However, there's no form of self-medication with substances that will effectively erase the pain of loss. In fact, alcohol acts as a depressant, intensifying negative emotions like shame or sadness. It can impair your quality of life and your relationships. And if you have a history of depression, anxiety, or previous addiction, you may be more at risk of becoming an alcoholic. I want you to really seriously consider removing alcohol from your diet for your physical and mental health. Our last area of nutrition is sugar, and I saved it for the last because it is a biggie. So sugar is found in so many sources. It comes from processed foods and whole foods, but sugar is responsible for agitation, weight gain, excess cortisol, lack of energy, increased risk of type 2 diabetes, weakens your immune system. It's also responsible for mood swings, depression, and grief brain. There are many forms of sugar: dextrose, fructose, galactose, glucose, lactose, maltose, sucrose. It can be found in almost everything. Here's some food that you may not think that has sugar: low-fat yogurt, chocolate milk, spaghetti sauce, sports drinks, granola, iced tea, protein bars, pre-made soup, breakfast cereal, pre-made smoothies, salad dressing. And the list sounds a lot like the gluten list. It's because the processed foods take and add gluten and add sugar. And you cannot totally get away from sugar because there's also sugar in whole foods that you eat. However, regardless of where the sugar comes from, there is a recommended daily allowance to adhere to. For women, it's 100 calories per day, 25 grams. Think about this, a 20-ounce bottle of Coca-Cola has 65 grams of sugar versus the 25 that's recommended. And so right off the bat with one Coke, you're 40 grams over on the sugar for your recommended allowance. Sugar is also now being contributed to heart disease more so than cholesterol. While I do not have empirical evidence that sugar contributes to broken heart syndrome, there is research that heart health is impacted by sugar. So going out on a limb, it is my logical conclusion that sugar can contribute to the risk and signs and symptoms of broken heart syndrome. Now, I understand reducing your sugars is a hard thing to think about, but it's going to help with your health and in your grief. So think twice before grabbing a soda, candy bar, or bag of chips. Give yourself all the fighting power that you can to help yourself move through your loss. You don't have to be perfect. Give yourself some grace. Take a few of these ideas, and in a few months, you will look back and see that you focused on your health in the midst of your grief with more energy, less brain fog, and better sleep. So I've given you a lot of information about nutrition. So here is a quick recap. Eat real food and add plant powdered juice plus capsules to your diet. Drink 1/2 your body weight in ounces of water. Eliminate gluten and dairy, and reduce caffeine, alcohol, and sugar. And I followed this healthy lifestyle before and after my son's death. It is an integral part of my healing from my grief. Now, while there is no right or wrong way to grieve, there are healthy options to cope with the pain. So I've given you what I have today about physical health with exercise and nutrition. In the next part of the presentation, I want to share with you about emotional health, sometimes referred as mental health. While they are closely related, they are distinctly different. I want to share with you what being emotionally healthy looks like. People who are emotionally healthy are in control of their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. They're able to cope with life's challenges, and they keep their problems in perspective and bounce back from setbacks. They feel good about themselves and have good relationships. Now, I also want to bring up some examples of poor emotional health because you can evaluate yourself and see where you are. So consistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness, and more than usual irritability, anger, aggression, or hostility, frequent crying or tearfulness, withdrawal from friends, loss of interest in activities that you used to love, changes in sleeping and eating habits, and unusual restlessness and agitation. So I'm thankful that I get to help grieving moms. Just last week, I was working with Carol, who lost a child 4 months ago. She was experiencing guilt that her child took her life, and she could never release herself of that guilt. When she first started working with me, she was afraid of being judged and felt guilty. So I shared the 3 C's with her. You cannot control others, you cannot cure others' problems, and you cannot cause them to do what they do. Even though she wanted to take on responsibility, I revoked her superpower to control others. She looked at me as if I was speaking a foreign language. She always thought she was responsible for missing the signs and symptoms. She thought she knew her daughter and that they shared everything. The only way she would have known all of her daughter's thoughts if you were a mind reader. Even though she thought she could, that was another superpower I revoked. Carol also felt that she failed her daughter and did not protect her, even though she did everything she did with the information she had. She expected to be a fortune teller and predict the future. Again, I revoked that superpower. So once Carol was able to realize she did not cause, cure, or control what her daughter did, she was able to release herself of that guilt. We met on a webinar similar to this called 3 Tips to Move Through Child Loss. I'm so grateful we did. Carol is now giving herself permission to release herself of the guilt. Again, she did not control, cure, or cause her daughter to end her life. And as you know, addressing your emotions doesn't happen overnight. It takes a shift in your mindset about your circumstances. Let's talk about that for a moment. Mindset is a collection of thoughts and patterns that shape your view of reality. It's a story that you tell yourself about the world around you. Now, changing your mindset is one of the most beneficial things you can deal with your emotions and your grief. It's also one of the hardest. It's mind over matter. Mind over matter is a phrase that refers to one's ability to overcome subconscious thoughts. You can control your emotions by changing your subconscious thoughts. Do you tell yourself you don't know how you will overcome your loss? You could be telling yourself you don't deserve happiness, or you're responsible for your child's passing. You may even think you will never be the same. You may be saying them to yourself, someone else may be saying them to you, or it can be a combination of the two that burns these subconscious thoughts into your mind. It is no wonder you have difficulty working through your emotions and your grief when there are untruths guiding you through every thought. So the more you think the same thought over and over and over, the more ingrained they become into your mindset. These thoughts literally form pathways in your brain by connecting neurons over and over again. It's like a well-worn path through a field. If you walk the same path time and time, you will wear down the grass in that particular path. The same thing happens in your brain as you reinforce certain neural pathways through repeated negative thoughts. Now, your thoughts are meant to protect you from harm. Your mind is exceptionally good at doing that. It keeps you from pain, even though pain is necessary to move through your grief. So, changing your mindset and subconscious thoughts are difficult to work through. You must be vulnerable to the possibility of pain and willing to walk through it to heal. It takes time and figuring out what your subconscious mind is telling you. Your subconscious mind has immense power in controlling your life experiences, response to grief and to anger and guilt and sadness. So once you've discovered that, I find that affirmations are a good way to reroute and rewire those thoughts. Instead of believing you will never get over your loss, you will have hope. So while doing affirmations does change what you believe and ultimately your conscious thoughts and actions, rewiring your brain takes time, effort, and guidance. They need to be written, specifically, if written incorrectly, they will do more harm than good. It is a good idea to work with someone experienced in writing affirmations. Now, I have 8 to 10 affirmations I do, and when I do them in the morning, I feel like I'm off on a good start because it sets the stage for how my day goes and how I'm thinking. I do them before I go to night, so those are the positive thoughts that are on my subconscious mind before I go to sleep. And one of my favorite affirmations is, I am a great mother and always will be. This wraps up our emotional health. Here in the third part of the presentation, I want to share with you about your mental health. And so allow me to offer another short definition. Mental health is your cognition, beliefs, thoughts, and edicts you live by with peace of mind and happiness. Eileen, one of my clients, when we were coaching session together, asked me for examples of what good mental health looks like. I shared 5 signs of positive mental health. You feel good about yourself, number 1. Number 2, you do not become overwhelmed by your emotions, such as fear, anger, jealousy, guilt, or anxiety. And number 3, you have a long and lasting relationships. And 4, you feel comfortable with other people in new situations. And 5, you can laugh at yourself and others. I also shared with her other signs and symptoms of poor mental health because we want to know what that looks like as well. And mental illness is also known as poor mental health. It's a wide range of conditions and disorders that affect your mood, thinking, and behavior. There are 5 basic categories of mental illness: depression, anxiety disorders, schizophrenia, eating disorders, and addictive behavior. It is crucial to assess where you are currently to develop that plan of action. If you have mental illness, it is important to address them and open space so you can heal in your grief. Mental illness is not to be taken lightly and should be diagnosed by a medical practitioner. If you feel you're experiencing the effects and symptoms of mental illness, please see your medical provider. The good news is that mental illness is not a normal part of the grieving process. Plenty of people survive the loss of a loved one without experiencing them. I have been a grieving mom for 30 years. I've also been a healing mom for 30 years. And now I'm a mother who lost a child by suicide. And I immediately wanted to know why Connor took his life. He had not demonstrated the typical signs of depression or suicidal ideation. Suicide brings with it a new set of mental health challenges for the suicide loss survivor. And I was advised to stay out of that canyon of why. However, I did have to peek over the rim so I could have some answers. I also knew I would never know all of them. And out of curiosity, I took an unofficial, non-scientific poll with other suicide loss survivors as to why they thought their loved one took their life. Here are some of the answers. There's a range with a variety of responses. I felt a connection because they had lost as well. Kristen, her best friend, 24-year-old male, experienced anxiety and depression, but never let on. Tammy, 23-year-old son, suffered from depression and addiction and feeling he was not enough. No outward signs until the very end. Amanda, her 18-year-old cousin, suffered multiple traumatic brain injuries due to sports-related concussions, and he expressed having dark thoughts that he lost the battle to. Jasmine, 15-year-old son, suffered in silence with depression and a learning disability. Aaron, her 24-year-old boyfriend, 12 months earlier, found his best mate and had to cut him down, resulting in PTSD that he could not deal with. Lacey, 20-year-old male friend with dissociative identity disorder. These are just a few of the responses I received, and I know it helps them with their mental health. So I discovered suicide loss survivors want to talk about their loved one. Now, why this gives comfort to those left to figure out why they took their life. We will never have all the answers. We only see part of the picture. And what we do know from those whose suicide attempts were not successful, they share that their suicide is not to end their life, but to end the pain and suffering. And while they wanted to end their pain and suffering, this is what I found that I believed, and it has helped me to accept my loss. I believe Connor made that choice to end his life. That was in the moment, and it was something that he did not think through. It was just the right time to end it all. I also have to believe now, after finding out more, Connor was haunted by demons, and they no longer sit on his shoulder, and he's no longer suffering. He's at peace. What a huge relief for me. Connor, through his 12-step programs, took responsibility of his life circumstances, and he's taken responsibility for this as well. In my communications and signs after life, he has indicated if he had known the pain and sorrow, he would not have taken his life. I also believe those who took their life want us to enjoy life, smile and laugh, and not dwell on feelings of sadness and remorse. They want us to love others and take steps in moving positively towards new horizons, help others in their suicide bereavement, and not let their self-inflicted death, in fact, dictate our happiness and future. That is what I have for your mental health. Now let's move on to your spiritual health. Spiritual health is a personal matter involving values, integrity, and compassion that supports the purpose and mission of your life. It's important to ponder the meaning of your life yourself by accepting the beliefs of others, than to close your mind and become intolerant. So, what are some examples of spiritual health and wellness? Well, that provides us with systems of faith and beliefs and values. And it may include volunteerism, social contributions, belonging to a group, optimism, forgiveness, and compassion. So you have a choice to believe or not to believe in God, but a higher power is a supreme deity or other conceptions of God. Maybe you believe in there is a God, something bigger than you. Whatever it is, it's something that you turn to that explains the unexplainable. Your higher power gives you peace and rest. And I believe in God and will refer to him as such throughout the presentation. If that is not your belief, that's okay. Feel free to insert higher power when I describe God. I've seen it happen time again. Those of a loved one who've lost a person to suicide, their inner core has been changed in who they are. And they who once believed in God now scream out in anger and ask why. The pain is so great and they lose their faith in God. Their Christianity is now shaken and they dismiss God. On the other side of the coin are those who did not have any sort of faith in God, but are drawn to him in difficult times. A grieving parent may not have anywhere else to turn in their suicide loss. They want something that can give them strength and courage. So after Connor died, I changed from being just that holiday attender and believer to daily meditator, prayer warrior, and look to God for answers. It is absolutely amazing what's happened. He shows himself and gives me comfort. I want to share a couple messages I've received from God. Over 300 people attended Connor's funeral, and some were from 12-step programs. And the pastor who conducted his service felt that there are many non-believers, and he wanted to show them that God did not take Connor's life in his final moments. He was with him. God was standing next to him, screaming in his ear, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it." God could have stopped him, but he did not. He let him follow his free will, and that has helped me move through my grief. Another powerful message come from a chaplain I worked with. We had talked about Connor taking his life and what was going through his head. And what is he experiencing had to be so bad, ending it all was the only way out. Pain was unbearable. The chaplain shared with me that those demons that were on his shoulder were haunting him. Satan no longer has a hold on him. So prayer is a way to communicate with God and request, expression, or thanks to God. I find that praying is an opportunity to talk with God. It's easy to do and can be simple as saying, "Help." The Holy Spirits know what is on your heart, and it counts on whatever you think. Prayers do not have to be perfect. They can be said anywhere, anytime, no judgment. You can pour out your grief, ask for comfort, healing, peace, and strength. I do want to know God is using me to help you in your lost journey. Without a doubt, I know that God has given me all the tools and resources and beliefs to survive this season and the suicide loss. God does not choose the strong to lead, but gives the weak, broken, and tired the strength to lead. I am one of those broken, and tired. And I wanted God to give me the courage and the strength to help you. So you might consider visiting a church and seeing if that's your option. Let me compare this also. In your darkest hour, you may feel buried and unable to cope. Think of yourself as a seed that has been planted in the soil. Soil needs to be in the dark for a season to sprout and grow. Look for ways for things that are being prepared for you. What plans does God have for you? My clients often ask me, "Peggy, did your son make it to heaven?" I tell them when I was young, I heard that taking one's life was a sin, and that if you killed yourself, you would not go to heaven. I don't believe that anymore. I believe that you are welcome into heaven. And this has given me comfort and hope that I will see my son again. This wraps up spirituality. and our final health component. We started off our time together learning about suicide. We then addressed how to move through your grief by looking at you as a whole person with 4 aspects of health: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Your journey as a suicide loss survivor will always be one you travel, and suicide grief can be an emotional roller coaster. One of the most common questions I get from people is they ask me, Peggy, is there a way we can get the same results individually that you offer from stage? As a matter of fact, I answer yes. I offer an 8-week coaching program. So just yesterday, when I was on a grief breakthrough session, a grieving mom told me she had no idea where to turn for help and there was help available. She was struggling, feeling like an outcast, and that she wanted to feel normal again. She decided to sign up for my 8-week coaching program for some help to move towards those goals. And it can be difficult to imagine becoming a suicide loss survivor, not knowing how to make it through the next day, month, or year. Anyone who has suffered a suicide loss does not need to do it alone. There are options out there as to what works. I do know that having someone help you move through your loss, that you're more likely to be able to live without your loved one. And I offer a complimentary grief breakthrough session to help you see your own possibilities. In our time together, you can share your story with me, someone who genuinely cares. You will walk away with at least one practical tip that you can implement immediately. When you are finished, you will have hope that you will make it through your loss. And I make it super easy to schedule your complimentary session. Text the word breakthrough, BREAKTHROUGH, to this number, 719-789-6808. Again, breakthrough to 719-789-6808. And I'll send you a link and you can choose a time to schedule that works for you. It's free, no obligation. And I do this because I know there's a percentage of you out there who want help, and I would love to help you. I started helping mothers in their child loss grief because when I went through my first loss, I had to figure it out on my own. And now I'm helping suicide loss survivors because we're in this club together. I am your resource who will care, listen, and understand what you're going through. Now that you know I am a grief coach, I think each one of you should find somewhere to get some support. What is important is you don't do it alone. But I want you to think about this before you decide who you work with. There are 3 criteria I recommend to help you determine who you will work with. Number 1, consider, does the person you want to work with have practical experience with suicide child loss? I have survived child loss twice, once by accident, once by suicide. And I will bear witness to your loss, can walk beside you, and will share my expertise. Number 2, does the person have the passion to be working as a grief coach? I want to help you live that fulfilling life. Here's a nice quote. The best teachers are still learning, and the best healers are still healing. Number 3, have they personally used the tools and techniques I share? Because I know that they are 100% responsible for me being able to support you. And I created these resources. Now, I must say there's a number of you that put it off and try to do it on your own, and then they come back wishing they would have done it earlier. I will leave you with this. After my son died by suicide, I started posting on Facebook. I was being vulnerable and sharing my heartache, confusion, and despair. And having the mindset of my courageous post was not just about grief. They also included my tips and methods on how I was getting through my loss. There were so many people responding to my posts. They shared me, they were benefiting and getting my strength and courage. Some of them talked about loss of a loved one by suicide, their child loss or parent loss. Others included the difficult times they were experiencing. It was here that I knew I was on to something. I am blessed to have built the resources to move through the unique loss by suicide and help other grieving moms. I was introduced to a personal development coach who has helped me realize the number of people who will be helped because of my experience in suicide loss. Out of my personal growth, I have developed my life's purpose, and I want to share that with you now. My purpose is to be joyful, grateful, present, encouraging, positive, and be the best possible version of myself and my personal and professional relationships, exemplify Christ in all that I do so that I am an example of life's possibilities. It was pivotal to have a coach to support me so I could step into my purpose. Sometimes we can all get stuck, and it takes a coach or mentor to move us along, even in grief. I can walk beside you and help you find peace, joy, and happiness. And thank you for joining me today.